and he ends up at the toll station. So the logic that Krishna knows the suffering of others, but because he doesn't suffer, he doesn't experience that suffering. That's the kind of that kind of logic is being expressed. They say, same group of people, that one perceives suffering when suffering touches the heart. The suffering may be one's own personal suffering or the sufferings of others. There is no real distinction. Both are suffering. He refutes this. Any idea that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not all-knowing is refuted by the example that compares him to the everywhere shining sun. Also, in this way, it is seen that the Lord does have transcendental qualities. So his compassion isn't like our compassion. This idea that the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally suffers is not the truth. The truth is that even though he is aware of all suffering that occurs, the Supreme Personality of Godhead never feels suffering personally. And he gives two reasons. One, this is because he's all powerful. He has the power to do anything, to undo anything, and to change anything into anything else. Two, it is also, he doesn't experience suffering personally because he is by very nature the crest jewel of all compassionate persons. He does not require to suffer personally in order to feel compassion for others. So this rule that Narada expressed, if you haven't experienced pinpricks, you won't know what the pain of pinprick is. So when you see somebody's facial expression of pain because a pin is pricking them, then you know what pain is. So Krishna doesn't, he breaks that rule because he's all powerful and because he's all knowing. He breaks the rule. He doesn't have to experience the suffering of others. He doesn't suffer the sufferings of others. Then he goes to the other side. There's suffering, then there's happiness. Devotional service brings happiness to the devotees. Obstacles that prevent them from meeting the Supreme Personality of God, it brings the devotees suffering. This is transcendental suffering as opposed to the material kind. When the Lord sees these obstacles in the path of a devotee, his heart melts with compassion for the devotees. That compassion takes the form of devotional service. He, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is seeing, here's somebody that is a devotee. Right? They want to be a devotee, and there's obstacles for them. Some of our obstacles, largely it's the mind and stuff that's inside, contaminations of the mind. And when Krishna sees that, he feels transcendental compassion because it's a spiritual suffering. We want to be with Krishna, we're not there yet. And there's obstacles and obstacles, mainly internal. So he gives us devotional service. That's to bring us to the position of happiness, to relieve the unhappiness or the suffering. It's a nice understanding of devotional service from Krishna's side. He extends the opportunity to devotional service for those who want. This is the example of the desire tree. If you remember, we'll hear it again. But the desire, some people say, well, the desire tree is neutral. And if people approach the desire tree for something from the desire tree, then the desire tree reciprocates. And if they don't, then just remains a desire tree. Though the logic seems to go in that direction, because the devotee wants Krishna. How does the devotee want Krishna? By association with another devotee, and they hear about bhakti, they receive bhakti. That's our position. We hear about bhakti, and so there's some awakening of the natural bhakti that's within. But we're not there yet. So to the degree that we're eager for that connection, Krishna connection, there's an obstacle ourselves. Krishna gives us devotional service through the agency of his devotees and so forth. Then he gives scriptural example to confirm this. Many devotees like Gajendra turn to the Lord when they are troubled by material sufferings. In this condition, they pray, Gajendra and others like him. The Supreme Lord is my only shelter. From Bhagavad Gita, 4 types of pious people render service unto me. So this is one, those in distress. And they attain devotional service. Others, like the Yamala Arjun trees, attain devotional service by the mercy of great souls, Sri Narada. Nalakuvara Manigriva didn't pray, "Oh, Lord, you're my only shelter." He just bestowed it upon them. 2 different positions. Still others attain devotional service because they're naturally humble. I mean, it's not a material humble, it's a spiritual humble. And here comes a spark. A kind of neophyte devotee comes along and associates with this naturally, spiritually humble person, and devotional service ignites. In these 3 ways, the Lord gives his mercy and frees his devotees from material sufferings. So the operative principle here is there's somehow or other, there's attraction for Krishna that means association with devotees, and someone says yes. So Krishna reciprocates with that yes. And the material sufferings are long-term, at least, permanently dismissed. Krishna does not consider whether they are qualified to receive his mercy or not qualified to receive it. He gives his mercy without restriction. In this way, he stops the sufferings of his devotees. Now, this means the spiritual sufferings. He rescues them from the cycle of repeated birth and death. Next, if material sufferings had a different cause, they might never come to an end. In this way, it is proved that material sufferings and material happiness are meant to bring the soul to the Supreme Lord and to the happiness of devotional service. Now, that's true for the non-devotees and the devotees. But the non-devotees don't see it that way, and the devotees see it that way. When a parent is restricting or admonishing a dependent or teacher, student, or whatever, it's to restrict suffering and bring happiness. And when that parent or teacher or somebody, senior friend, is a spiritually oriented individual, then it's to bring them to a spiritual happiness and end the material and spiritual suffering. Bring one to spiritual happiness and end spiritual suffering, which also mitigates the material happiness and distress. We just goes to another level of consciousness. Next, if the perception of happiness and suffering were different from this description, then the attainment of happiness and the end of suffering would be attained in a way other than by engaging in devotional service. This conclusion is not at all logical or true. So I'll read it again. If the perception of happiness and suffering were something different from this description, then the attainment of real happiness and the end of suffering would be attained in a way other than by engaging in devotional service. So devotional service is the link with Krishna. And if Krishna just disappears and devotional service disappears, then you're not going to get the attainment of happiness and suffering through devotional service. Then the perception of happiness and suffering, it's resting upon a bodily conception of life, which covers the spiritual conception of life. So real suffering and the so-called happiness, which is another kind of suffering, is forgetfulness of who we are. Say it again. Real material suffering and so-called material happiness, which is another suffering. What's the cause? Forgetfulness of who we are. And so we suffer in the material conception of life, and so-called material happiness, which is another suffering. And if it was different, then it wouldn't be that devotional service brings an end of material suffering and awakening of genuine happiness. It's not true. Thus, the conclusion is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead never experiences material happiness or material suffering. He is like a spiritual kalpavriksha that fulfills everyone's desires. This is confirmed by Sri Akrura in these words, our verse for this morning, 10:38:22. Quote, no one is Krishna's dearest friend. No one is his hated enemy. No one is rejected by him. Still, he reciprocates his devotees' love. To them, he is like a kalpavriksha tree that fulfills all desires. Now, to those who are not devotees, they don't see Krishna as a kalpavriksha tree. But even, the materially motivated devotee, they see him as a kalpavriksha tree. I want this, I want that. Om Jai Jagadisha Hare. Please fulfill this desire. Please fulfill that desire. God is our order supplier. He's got a big warehouse and he can supply whatever we want. So we go to him. That's also, it's a lower range of devotion, but it's devotion. It's the beginning. It's a beginning. Commentary continues. Here, in Akrura's verse, the word kashchit means a person who is not a devotee. That person who Krishna doesn't reject or doesn't have enmity towards. That's this kashchit person who's not a devotee. That the Supreme Personality of Godhead dearly loves his devotees is confirmed by these words. 10:48:26. My dear Lord, you are affectionate, very affectionate to your devotees. You are also a truthful and grateful friend. Where is that learned man who would give you up and surrender to someone else? The person speaking this verse is Akrura. The circumstance is Krishna has gone to Mathura. He's killed Kamsa, freed Vasudeva and Devaki. Ugrasena is now installed on the throne. And Krishna is visiting some personalities in Mathura. And Akrura at his home is one of the places that Krishna goes. And this is a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, Krishna and Akrura. where Akrura says, "My dear Lord, you are affectionate to your devotees. You are also a truthful and grateful friend. Where is that learned man who would give you up and surrender to someone else? You fulfill all the desires of your devotees, so much so that sometimes you give yourself to them. Still, you neither increase nor decrease by such activity." So this is Krishna is affectionate to his devotees, confirmed. That the Supreme Personality of Godhead is equal to all is also confirmed by the following words spoken by Lord Shiva. He's affectionate to his devotees, he's equal to all. Lord Shiva, to Parvati, 6th canto, the King Chitraketu story. Lord Shiva says, he, the personality of Godhead, holds no one as very dear and no one as inimical. He has no one for his own relative, and no one is alien to him. He is actually the soul of all living entities. Thus, he is the auspicious friend of all living beings and is very near and dear to them all. The magnanimous Chitraketu is a dear devotee of the Lord. He is equal to all living entities and is free from attachment and hatred. Similarly, I am also very dear to Lord Narayan. The Lord is like this, the devotee is like this, and I'm like this. And Chitraketu and I are like this because of our attachment to the Lord. So we have qualities like the Lord. Commentary continues that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is equal to all and is like a desire tree that fulfills his devotees' desires, is described also by Sri Prahlad in Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 8, Chapter 23. This is the Bali Maharaj section. Prahlad comes, he's his grandfather. And when Bali is being bound, this is what Prahlad says. "Oh Lord, your pastimes are all wonderfully performed by your inconceivable spiritual potency and by her perverted reflection, the material energy. You have created all the universes. As the super soul of all living entities, you are aware of everything, and therefore you are certainly equal toward everyone. Nonetheless, you favor your devotees. This is not partiality. However, for your characteristic is like that of a desire tree, which yields everything according to one's desire." Jiva Goswami writes, what this verse by Prahlad means is this. O Lord, you favor your devotees, Bhakti Priyosi, but still you're certainly equal toward everyone, Sama Drisha. This is not partiality, avishama. However, for your characteristic is like that of a desire tree, kalpataru swabhava, which yields everything according to one's desire. So the kalpavriksha tree is not partial to people who come to the kalpavriksha tree. Neutral, not partial. In another interpretation of this verse by Prahlad, it is understood that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is like a desire tree and other like things, and for this reason one should take shelter of him. Also, he is naturally partial to his devotees, and this partiality to them does not at all conflict with his natural impartiality to everyone. So, like That's how Prabhupada would commonly explain this. His partiality is not partiality. He gives, you've heard this. He gives the example of a parents that have many children. One child is particularly affectionate to the parents, so they have affection for all their children, but that child that shows special affection for the parents, they naturally reciprocate that affection of that child that has special affection for the parents. And it's not partiality, it's just reciprocation with the affection of that affectionate child. So he's partial and he's not partial. He's not partial and he's partial. The partial is just reciprocating, although it looks like partial. The Lord's partiality to his devotee is appropriate because in this way he reciprocates with them. Bhaktan bhajate. Because the Lord has inconceivable potencies, his impartiality to all and his partiality to his devotees do not contradict each other. We heard that before. Now it's being expanded upon. His potencies is a reason or an explanation of why, because he has unlimited diverse potencies, he exhibits some potencies this way, some potencies that way. And it's not due to partiality. It's just he has so many potencies. That's similar to the Kalpavriksha tree example. That the Lord is partial to the devotees is also confirmed in these words, 2.4.14. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto he who is the associate of the members of the Yadu dynasty and who is always a problem for the non-devotees. He is the supreme enjoyer of both the material and spiritual worlds, yet he enjoys his own abode in the spiritual sky. There is no one equal to him because his transcendental opulence is immeasurable. Because his transcendental opulence is immeasurable. Sridhar Swami comments on this verse, here there is no fault in the Lord's partiality to the devotees, for the Lord has inconceivable powers and opulences. That, although he is equal to all, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is still partial to his devotees, as confirmed in these words by Sri Bhishma, 1.9.21-22. The Bhishma Dev chapter, first canto. Being the absolute personality of Godhead, he is present in everyone's heart. He is equally kind to everyone, and he is free from the false ego of differentiation. Therefore, whatever he does is free from material inebriety. He is equal balanced. Yet, despite his being equally kind to everyone, he has graciously come before me while I'm ending my life, for I am his unflinching servitor. He doesn't do that for everybody that's leaving their bodies. He's come before Bhishma Dev. Why? I'm his unflinching servitor. Jiva Goswami is just guiding us, holding us by the hand, and taking us through this picture of equal, not equal. So when we say that he's not equal, we should understand what that means when he's partial, because partiality is a fault, materially speaking. Friend enemy is a fault. So he doesn't see friend enemy, but he's partial to the devotee. Well, it looks like friend enemy. He kills the demons and embraces the devotee. Friend enemy. Looks like. But it's not. So it's transcendental reciprocation that which looks like a fault as a quality. Dosha becomes guna. It's not a fault, nor is it a contradiction. But you can say it in contradictory ways. Yeah, all of these references are speaking like that. Like this last one is Bhishma. This partiality to the devotees is confirmed by the Lord himself in these words of Bhagavad Gita. Samoham Sarvabhuteshu 929. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I'm equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I'm also a friend to him. Conclusion. This is the last paragraph. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not at fault for being partial to his devotees. He also manifests his various incarnations and pastimes by his transcendental potency for the purpose of pleasing his devotees. He does not descend to this world in order to protect the material world. That was already established by Vidura's question 3.7.2 through 7, previously quoted in this book. So we went over that on Saturday morning. I could go over it again, but it's, he asked this question about the Lord's potencies and the material world and so forth. He comes for the devotee, not to protect the world. That's the answer. I feel like I can go back and go over that again. So it does continue. The commentary on this verse continues, and in part, we're not going to do it this morning, but it goes on because this is an important concept. Circling back to what we said at the beginning, in Bhagavat Sandarbha, this is Paramatma Sandarbha. In Bhagavat Sandarbha, he goes into it again. Jiva Goswami, a whole long section on resolving the apparent contradictions, because the Vedas are filled with it. Not by accident. He walks, he doesn't walk. He's very near, he's very far away as well. He's with everything, he's outside of everything. He's bigger than the biggest and smaller than the smallest at the same time. So how to understand those things? Well, if you're an impersonalist, you just put it in a blender and turn it on high speed. It's all one. And if you're a devotee, you have to be very careful and consider the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. He's at the same time this and that. And logically, it must be. It must be, because the source of everything has within it everything. So if there's this, there also has to be that. And this and that are within that source of everything. So he's simultaneously this and that. He may exhibit this, may exhibit that, but they're simultaneously within him. And for him, it's not a problem. And for materialists, it's, with binary processors, it's, wait a minute, it's either this or that. Or if you don't understand it, it just becomes homogenized. It's all one. But the transcendental nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is meant for us to understand. So the understanding can be very simple. The understanding can be intermediate. The understanding can be very detailed. Jiva Goswami is very kindly taking his reader through the detail with abundant explanation from references from Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam particularly, and other sources to help us get a refined understanding. so that at least this much, we have confidence there's scriptural authority behind the Vaishnav conception. Even if your capacity doesn't get all the innuendos, there's scriptural authority behind again and again and again to the point where, okay. There's scriptural authority for these contradictions are within the Supreme Lord and they're not contradictions. It's just part of the Supreme Lord. He appears to be partial, but he's not partial. He's partial, but he's not partial. He's just reciprocating with the devotee's desire. And then this thing with compassion, he's all-knowing, but it's not like he doesn't feel compassion. Because in order to feel compassion, you have to feel the pain of others, and he doesn't feel the pain of others because he doesn't feel pain. And therefore, he's conscious, but he's not compassionate. That's rejected by that logic example you heard. And how he deals with those who are absorbed due to aversion to the Supreme Lord, they're absorbed in the material energy. He lets them be absorbed in the material energy. Doesn't like it, but he doesn't interfere. And those that are the devotees, we're trying to be devotees, he wants to give us real happiness. And that comes in the form of devotional service. So we want to fan the spark of devotional service. We want to be agents that help fan the spark of others in their devotional service. We want to nourish that and not obstruct it by, distractions, finding material solutions to material problems without the spiritual solution to the material problems. All of you in the room, you're wearing the masks, you're taking a precaution. We're not cavaliers saying, oh, I'm a devotee and so Krishna will protect me. We take precautions. You drive within the speed limit and you do things that are appropriate in a precautionary way. We're not unlimited risk takers. But that's not the protection. The protection is Krishna. Although we're taking precaution. So let's see if there's some discussion. Oh. So I spoke on the wrong verse because I missed a beat. Miami devotees, my apologies.
Okay, no, it was good. It was a great class. Now I have a question. Ariwo.
For some reason, I don't think Maharaj is hearing us. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now I can hear you. Miami devotees, my apologies. My memory failed me. And so I just conducted class according to the sequence that I've been following.
That was great class.
My apologies to all of you. And because I thought it was live stream, I wasn't just looking at the camera. Now that I know it's Zoom, I'm going to be a good boy and look at the camera. Sorry for both of those slips. So were you able to hear the class?
Yes.
Okay. So because this is dedicated to the Miami group and I guess Fort Lauderdale group, if there's
Yes.
any comments or questions, you can unmute yourself and speak, or you can send something to the chat box and it can be read out, whichever you prefer.
Okay, Bhagavatam.
Jadvad, you can go ahead with your question.
My question. Okay, my question is, even I was talking to a congregational member, and he's from India, and he said even the spiritual world, like Jai and Vijay, they fell down from the spiritual world. So what is a warranty if I serve Krishna that I go to the spiritual world and come back? There's no any guarantee. Can you explain, comment?
Yes, I can comment. Few things. First, your congregation members should know or be reminded that Jai and Vijay being cursed is a one-time deal.
Mm.
It's totally exceptional. It's not the rule. So to respond to your congregation friend, don't worry. It's that's exceptional. That there's some detail, that is to say, Jai and Vijay. This is Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's explanation. Jai and Vijay wanted to serve Lord Narayan because they were doorkeepers. They had intimate contact with the Lord, and they understood his inner feelings. And one of those inner feelings was chivalry, which is a secondary rasa. And with that chivalry, he wanted some combat. And they were praying to Lord Narayan, if you so desire, we can perform that service for you. We can provide some combat for you, if you so desire. And so they're coming to the material world, being cursed by the four Kumaras, was in part a fulfillment of that desire, which is extraordinary and not norm. That's one. Two, Srila Prabhupada explained, before you or I or anyone can regain our position in the spiritual realm, we must become first 100% pure, and thus no longer will we make the same mistake of misuse of free will. And so when you return to the spiritual world, Prabhupada explains, living entities are still marginal. Marginal means we can be influenced this way, that way, the external, internal energy. We're marginal energy. But Krishna gives his promise, and we'll have learned our lesson, and so we won't. And then there's a third explanation that's a little more esoteric. You can try to explain this to your friend or just play back the recording. To place the event of living entities coming into this world as an event within time, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, is a mistaken conception. It's a misleading conception. The misleading conception is, once upon a time, we're in the spiritual world, we looked at our watch and said, you know what? I think I'd like to enjoy separately from Krishna. And then, boom, we fell into the material world. That's an event within time. But the fall of the living entity, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains, is no more an event within time than the living entities being created. Living entities are not created. Living entities are marginal energy expansions of the Supreme Lord, but it's not once upon a time the Lord looked at his watch and said, you know what? I think I'd like some living entities. Boop, there's some living entities. There is a relationship, we'll use a 50-cent word here, an ontological relationship between the living entities and the Supreme Lord, and we're emanations from him. But it's not an event within time. We're emanation from him, he is the source, but it's not an event within time. Nor is living entities coming within this material world an event within time. We eternally, and eternally means eternally, we have free will. We're part and parcel of the Supreme Eternal who has unlimited free will. We have tiny, tiny, tiny free will. Free will means we can use properly or improperly, otherwise there's no free will. So now, back to the question. The question is misleading if any one of us thinks of the living entity's departure from the spiritual world as an event within time, because it's not. There are such things as events that are not within time. What's a timeless event? We don't have any experience of a timeless event because we only know events within time. So therefore, the tendency is to think of the marginal living entity who has tiny free will, misusing that tiny free will as an event within time. The conception is a misleading conception, or in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's words, it's misleading. You can find this, tell your congregation member, you can find this very language in English by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's not the translator from Bengali. It's his writing, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, His Life and Precepts, that pamphlet that he sent, or small booklet that he sent in English around the world in 1896. It's published, or it's available in soft copy, and your congregational friend can read it and try to understand this puzzle. It's a puzzle. It's not easy to understand. So back to his question, you won't fall down from the spiritual world. Although as Prabhupada explains, we don't stop being marginal when we return to the spiritual world. We're still marginal. We don't fall down because we've learned our lesson, and Krishna gives us promise, you won't fall down.
Thank you very much. Very nice.
A little complex, but that's, it's a troubling question that devotees ask from time to time. And, my answer may not be satisfying to your congregational friend. I apologize if that's the case.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, so Navraj Swami, are you there? Did you want to ask a question also or make a comment? So I'll wait on him to respond. And Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for gracing us with your presence. So Krishna is partial to his devotees.
Yeah.
But and as for the compassion to the other living entities who are not presently his devotees, of course we are all his devotees, but presently we not in that mindset. how does he reach out to us? What's the method?
The one of the examples is the sun shining. The sun shines everywhere. So Krishna's reaching out to us is everywhere always. And how? By super soul within the heart. The rebellious living entity is accompanied by super soul. Even we're rebellious, he's still kind. And he's reminding us from within. Super soul or Krishna is sending representatives. He sends messengers. He sends scriptures. He sends Hare Krishna devotees chanting Hare Krishna to wake up the conditioned souls, Jeev Jago, and so forth. The sun is always shining and Krishna is always extending his mercy to others. But when the sun is shining, one can hide under a rock and one doesn't see the sunshine. The example given in this little section is the owl closes his eyes at night, but during the day, and opens his eyes at night. But it's darkness or darkness, so it's light or light. It's just, the behavior of the owl. So the behavior of persons can reject or, rebel against Krishna's reaching out, but Krishna reaches out in so many ways without limit. We're saying no. Even if it touches us, we say no.
Thank you for that, Maharaj. I think Mother Kasturi has a question.
Okay.
So let me ask her to unmute.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for the wonderful class, Maharaj. You were mentioning about that Krishna does not experience any material suffering or happiness. So, but we also hear that Krishna reciprocates to the sufferings of his devotees. So, how to understand that, Maharaj?
Well, we heard Jiva Goswami's explanation is Krishna wants to bring to his devotees spiritual happiness and relief of the spiritual distress of obstacles that are blocking the devotee from spiritual happiness or Krishna connection. And so therefore he reciprocates with the devotee in the form of devotional service. That's how he reciprocates. And to facilitate our devotional service, Krishna, this is from Brahma Samhita, Krishna, Govinda, may give some trouble. But the purpose of that trouble given to the devotee is to awaken ultimate happiness and diminish or dismiss spiritual suffering. Spiritual suffering means being disconnected from Krishna. So Krishna helps us in those ways, the devotees. And he asks the devotees, go canvass. Lord Chaitanya asks.
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Lakar Prabhu, did you have a question?
Well, I mean, first I want to express my complete appreciation for the class. It was a very, very nice class. And but at this time, I don't think I have any questions. I do have a small question, it's kind of like a personal question, but it's not. I don't know whether it's, but this. My apologies. I just want to express my appreciation for the class. Yeah, very nice. Thank you, Miraj. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I have one question. Hare Krishna Maharaj, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Please continue.
This is Janeshwar Gauranga Das. Please accept my respectful obeisances. Thank you for the class. Hare Krishna. I have one quick question. You said the Supreme Personality does not suffer. Now, in the pastime of Haridas Thakur, when they're whipping Haridas Thakur, in the Mahaprakash Lila, Lord Chaitanya shows Haridas Thakur is back, and we can see those markings. So how do we explain that?
The explanation is there's a difference between material and spiritual suffering. Just like, for example, when Bhishma Dev fires arrows and it hits the body of Krishna, what happens? Krishna shows blood. But we know from Ishopanishad, Krishna has no veins. So how's there blood? Or his body is all spiritual. So how is there blood? So it's a spiritual exhibition of something that to a worldly person looks like material pain. He got wounded by an arrow and there's blood and oh gosh. But from Krishna's perspective, it's ecstasy. But he's got a wound, a narrow wound with blood. And there's other examples like that. So the marks on the back of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a spiritual ecstasy. It's not material suffering.
So the Lord did not feel, quote unquote, any pain?
No pain. He took the beatings so that Haridas would not feel material pain. And for not only that, no marks on his body. Although he was quite elderly. No pain, no marks, no suffering. Now that's unique. That's not, everybody and anybody, but that's specific, like Grandfather Bhishma and the arrows that pierced the body of Krishna. There's other examples of that as well. And in Krishna's fight with Shalva, there's examples like that. And our acharyas describe it in a similar way. It's reciprocation in ecstasy.
So in Damodar Lila, we see that Lord Krishna, by under the influence of Yogma, he was really scared of Mother Yashoda.
Yeah. Isn't that wonderful?
So at that time, he was feeling that anxiety or whatever you want to call.
Yeah, he was feeling fear.
So,
and how is that possible? Well, it's possible because everything is possible for Krishna. Said negatively. Is there anything that's impossible for Krishna? No, there's nothing that's impossible. So can he feel that emotion? Yes. Is it genuine emotion? Yes. That's genuine emotion, not what we feel fear. His fear is not our fear. His fear is a loving reciprocation with Mother Yashoda.
Okay,
it's mind-boggling.
So when he got hit by the arrows of Bhishma, Dev, quote unquote, it was a spiritual pain, ecstasy.
No, it was ecstasy. It wasn't pain. He was like, And what was Arjuna thinking? Oh, those arrows were meant for me, and Krishna's getting in the way. This is in Brihat Bhagavatamrita. Arjuna laments. That's another ecstasy. He laments. You're saying I'm most fortunate. Look at this. Grandfather Bhishma was firing arrows intended for me, and Krishna was taking them in his body. How is that fortunate? I felt terrible. That's another ecstasy.
So same thing with Lord Chaitanya when the whips went on his mark, it was in ecstasy.
Yes. The beating of Haridas Thakur. Now, he didn't smile upon the constables that were beating him in the 22 marketplaces. But he was in ecstasy, protecting his devotee. And he did it in a way that he chose to do it. Like Krishna chose to protect Parikshit Maharaj in the womb of Uttara in the way that he chose to do it. He showed Maharaj Parikshit his form. So through his whole life, he could remember Krishna. But at the same time, Maharaj Parikshit was bitten by the snake bird and his body burst into flames instantly instead of Krishna could have protected him. There's all kinds of mysteries all over the place in our descriptions of the lives of great devotees. And in all cases, it's ecstasy. Krishna, our acharyas describe Maharaj Parikshit being not apparently protected was to show the transcendental fixed consciousness of Maharaj Parikshit. He didn't experience the pain of his body bursting into flames. He experienced the ecstasy of going to Krishna, giving up his body. It's not ordinary consciousness, but that's Maharaj Parikshit.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, we accept my obeisances. Mr. Prabhupada. Thank you for the wonderful lecture. Just a comment or a question. Follow up with Radha Vallabha Prabhu's question. You said that Krishna sent devotees to help other devotees. He doesn't come personally. I heard in a lecture that Srila Prabhupada was saying that some devotees, as they pray to Krishna, not to go back to Godhead or as Krishna desire. If Krishna want them to stay on earth, as Krishna
Krishna
desire.
was not what? Could you turn the speaker a little more? I can't hear. Turn it so it's pointing towards me. Thank you. Try it again. Go again, Sharanga.
Okay. I heard in a lecture, Srila Prabhupada was saying that some devotee, they pray to Krishna as you desire. You can leave me here in the material world or take me to the spiritual world as an instrument for you.
Yes.
Can you comment a bit more on that?
Well, that's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's not you and me. And in the highest stage that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was experiencing, he was prepared for anything. For our position, this is Srila Prabhupada explaining, we should be eager to achieve Krishna's association, Krishna's direct service, see Krishna, be with Krishna, and so forth. That's what our position should be. But the position of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, you can do with me whatever you like. You can take me to you, you can trample me, you can neglect me. Only one thing. So this is that you're asking me to expand. This is the one thing is, please keep me engaged in your service. So that's the most elevated position. We are not, we can look to that as, supremely elevated, but we're not to imitate. Okay, does that help?
Thank you, Maharaj. Yes.
Okay.
So do we have any more questions?
So Guru Maharaj, in that case, at our level, we should want to go back to Krishna.
Yes.
Then,
Yes.
not.
Yes, that's wholesome. And when we become more elevated, it becomes Lord Chaitanya's mood.
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj.
I think I have a question, Miraj. With your permission, are we okay?
Sure, I'm all ears.
I was trying to see how I can put this question the right way, but I just didn't want to bring it after. I guess one of the challenging situations is that, especially in America, when we have to, work or deal with other people who may not, self-evidently, they're not devotees, they're not vegetarians. So how can we go about, and especially we have a mission given to us by Srila Prabhupada to spread the teachings of Bhakti Yoga. How can we go about that in such a way that we're not going to be contaminated by their association, because invariably it's not easy right now, probably these days, to get, so how can we go about that? I was wondering whether we can share realizations in that
Sure.
respect.
I recommend that you read, I'll give some summary, but there's more detail in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Bhakti Aloka, which is the 6 and the 6 from Sri Ishopanishad. So how he write, because he was a householder. Of course, he was in India, and it's not America of modern times, but he gives principles for householders to navigate their way through unwholesome association. Because of being householders, we who are householders have occupations where we're engaged with people that are materialists. Maybe it's a more degraded materialist today in America than in India at his time, but the principle is the same. And he describes the principle of protection is essentially three things. You maintain cordial relations. Hello, how are you? How's your family? And it's whatever those cordial exchanges are. You can say small talk or just friendly exchange. That's a prayer that elevated devotees ask Krishna for, friendly relations with everyone. So you maintain those. Second is you do not engage in confidential discussions like, something that you might in the association of devotees discuss about devotional service and how you're taking up devotional service, because they don't have at all the capacity. You reserve those discussions for devotees. So you as a householder, or those of us, those who are householders, need to have devotee friends where they can exchange on that platform. And the third principle is you in the workplace will be protected if you're considering time, place, circumstance appropriate, how to give bhakti to others, even if you can't. If you're considering, just like a devotee that goes on Sankirtan, we're deliberately going out of our temples or our, the safe space, and we're mixing with worldly people, but we're protected because as long as we are considering how to give Krishna's mercy to these people. When it's book distribution, it's book distribution. If it's prasadam distribution, and if you're in the workplace, it's neither. You're not distributing books in the workplace. You may be giving prasadam here and there, but your meditation is, I'm Krishna's instrument. I'm here in the workplace in service to Krishna. My boss and the supervisor here thinks that they're in charge. I know that Krishna is in charge, and I'm here as Krishna's instrument. So I'll do my service nicely so that people, because they'll come to know that I'm a devotee, they'll have respect for Krishna and Krishna Bhakti because I'm doing my work nicely. But I'm always meditating on the back of my mind, at least, how to be an instrument for Krishna. And you'll be protected from unwholesome association by that meditation. And Krishna will give you opportunities. Doors will open that weren't there before, where someone will come and ask you something. Hey, you're a little different than everybody. What's the story? Or something. I've got this calamity. My wife has cancer, and I'm in a lot of distress, and you're a spiritual person. Can you share with me how I can handle this situation? So it happens. Krishna allows you to be his instrument by the consciousness of being his instrument. He gives opportunity. That's protection from unwholesome association and being an instrument of the mission of introducing Krishna Bhakti to others. But you have to do it, discreetly and have some intelligence and be patient, but always in the consciousness of, I'm an instrument. Krishna, please use me as your instrument. And he will.
Thank you, Maharaj. Your answer is completely appreciated. I think I may have that book, Bhakti Aloka. I don't think it wasn't easy to find, but somehow or other I was able to. It looks like it's in the library somewhere. So what section of that book it was
There's
recommended?
2 parts. This in the 6 and the 6, Shadbir Bhakti Prasidyati, Shadbir Bhakti Vinashati. There's 2, in those 2, 6 and 6, there's sections that says Satovrate. And if you go through the headings, because there's 12 chapters, and there are 2 chapters that are specific to association. Bhakti Vinod writes about renunciates and householders in both. So read that the householder is recommended to do these things to protect against unwholesome association. You'll find
Is
it.
that chapter 6 or?
No, I don't know the chapter number. Haven't memorized it. But, I say 6 and 6, there's 6 things that are beneficial for bhakti and 6 things that destroy bhakti.
I see.
From Nectar of Instruction. And,
Right.
And Bhakti Aloka is expanding on those 6 and the other 6. So there's 12 chapters. And I don't know, not from memory, I'm not recalling which chapter goes with an unwholesome association, specifically for a householder, but you'll find it there.
All right. Well, thank you, Maharaj. Your answer was completely appreciated. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. How are we doing? It's 8:30.
Yeah, so if no one has any other questions, I'd like to express my thanks to you, Maharaj, even though we had an uncommon situation at the beginning, but anywhere there is Krishna Katha and anywhere there's Sadhu Sangha, we are happy. Our time is well spent. So there's no need for you to apologize. Thank you for your time.
You're kind, and I'm going to carry, this regret that there's so many things I have to keep track of, especially during pandemic. It's lots of opportunities, but there's irregularities in those opportunities instead of the usual. So thank you for being kind to me. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Anandi Hari Hari Bol.
Jai. Thank you very much.
He didn't go ahead.